I read a book. This is the book that I read, The Sibley Guide to Bird Life and Behavior. I thought it was really interesting. I wrote down all the bird facts. I'm going to go through them here. A little bit of backstory. If this is the first time you're hearing about it, I've been reading this all year. I've been breaking it up because it's basically like a textbook and it's kind of dense. And I don't have that kind of educational background. So it took me a bit to get through it. But I set aside time, and every week I read not quite a chapter, at least a couple pages, a couple times a week. And so I was able to get through it. This is a pretty hefty book, a couple hundred pages for sure. Where did it actually, like 600 pages? And I learned a lot about birds. I also made 2024 the year of learning for watching. The thing that got me started going down the path for video specifically was a nature documentary called Our Planet, narrated by David Attenborough. So I got my hands on as many David Attenborough nature documentaries as I could, and I've watched a ton of them, but more on that later. Let's talk about the bird facts that I found interesting. Birds have hollow bones. That's almost common knowledge at this point, but I made a note of it. I think that's really interesting. I wonder what we would be like if we had hollow bones. Did you know that some waterfowl can only take flight from water, not from land? It has to do with the position of their legs and where they're at on the body. I had no idea. Something I really want to see, I'm hoping to see in the future, woodpeckers use their tail feathers propped up against tree trunks to support themselves while they hammer away. So they grip on with their legs, and then they take their tail and they dig that in as well and use that to kind of hold themselves upright where their weight is, and then they slam that beak into the... I would love to see that. That sounds awesome. I didn't know that. Birds can survive cold in a few different ways. One of them is a process called torpor. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. They drop their body heat and they're just unalert until it warms up. So if it gets really cold, imagine if you were, it's almost like a hibernation, but in a very short scale. If it was just like, oh, I'm so cold, I'm just going to power down and kind of nap for a bit until it warms up again. That's what they do. Eurasian kestrels can see on the UV spectrum, and they use that for mice hunting. Mice urine absorbs UV light, so their trails would be easy to spot for a kestrel. What? That's awesome. They don't have nearly as many taste buds as we do. Taste buds in birds are between 25 to 70. Humans, for comparison, have 10,000 taste buds. So, yeah. Birds need a lot of food because they burn a lot of energy. Constantly moving. Migration is ridiculous. I didn't realize the amount of toll it takes on them for migration. The fact that I wrote down here was a white-crowned sparrow must find a seed every 4 to 5 seconds during the winter day if it is to survive. That's crazy. That's a lot. And they are like, their body, they need as much heat as possible for that. So they have to, like, oh man, that's a lot. But yeah, migratory activity is brutal. They spend so much energy. They are flying continuously for 2 to 6 days without rest. That is equivalent to a human running 4-minute miles for 80 hours straight. That's ridiculous. Holy, I had no idea it was like that. I've heard of migration, but I'll be honest with you, I always thought it was done in steps, in phases, where they just kind of go, during the day, you'll see geese flying over and be like, oh, they're migrating or whatever. That's not the case where they are. When migration hits, they go. They pack a bag and they go. They don't really pack a bag, but like, that's the thing. And so they fly overnight as well. I did not realize that. Did you know the snowy egret will use its yellow toes to stir the surface of water, which will either attract fish or disturb them from their hiding places, and then they'll grab them? Oh, birds have a preen gland located just under the base of their tail that they spread onto their feathers. It helps keep them clean and prevents their feathers from drying out. It has chemicals that deter the growth of parasites, fungi, and bacteria. See, I wrote down further here, jumping back to the one about... waterfowl for the leg position and the center of gravity. Waterfowl with legs directly in the middle of their body are better at walking on land, things like a goose, whereas the loon has legs more towards the very rear of them, and they're really good at swimming, but they basically cannot walk on land. They're not very good at it. I'll put it that way. Some birds, like the chestnut-sided warbler, has different accented calls. The accented version is sung in the middle of their territory and the unaccented at the edges. The accent will bring in the females and the unaccented deters males. What? That's awesome. I didn't know that. They higher pitched, and buzzy songs tend to carry further in windy environments, whereas low-pitched is used by forest birds and it carries better through vegetation. That's awesome. Didn't know that. Oh, it's something else. This is just filled with things that I would love to be able to see one day. Some storm petrels will hover above the water and tap their feet on the ocean surface. That's either to alarm the prey and get them to move or to attract them. It's kind of similar to what we talked about with the snowy egret, but it's a bird hovering over water, tapping on it. The shearwater petrels and storm petrels young will often weigh more than twice an adult bird. They shed that weight as they grow before taking flight for the first time. They're basically fat little babies. Storm petrels, again, we're talking about those, they nest underground in burrows. The young will remain there for up to 17 weeks. That's a long time. Okay, this one was specific. Cormorants will bask in the sun after eating and spread their wings. Studies have shown that this is simply to dry the feathers. It has nothing to do with temperature or climate. I didn't know that. I've seen this behavior before from cormorants. I've also seen it from herons. That confused me so much when I saw a heron stand straight up and just spread its wings. I'd never seen anything like it. I've never seen anything like it since. The cormorants don't quite do that, but I had no idea the reason for it. Thanks to reading the book, I now know. Drying the feathers. They have to dry them somewhat, but they don't need them too dry. They have to be the right amount of moisture. Oh, did you also know that cormorants spit up a pellet like an owl? Other birds that eat prey whole, usually just before dawn. That'd be cool to see. Flamingos. What even are they? They're tall like herons. They have webbed toes like ducks. They honk like geese to keep their flock together. And they even produce a milk-like substance to feed their young like pigeons. What? Okay, here's something that we've seen once I moved across the country, the common goldeneye. Did you know that they nest in tree cavities? That's a strategy that requires the young to leap to the ground and follow their mother to the water just hours after hatching. I would love to see a common goldeneye nest. I assumed that they, like ducks, duck nests tend to be well concealed, and some species will build in dense and tall vegetation. They'll pull the leaves over the top to conceal the incubating bird. So they actually will cover themselves for even further. But that's, again, near water surface or right next to it or something. I didn't think about goldeneyes getting up in trees and tree cavities. The greater sage grouse will eat lots of sagebrush, which can be deadly to most animals, but not the grouse. Plovers are among the ground nesting species that will perform a broken wing distraction to pretend to be injured and draw predators away from their nest. Shorebirds will often hop about on one leg with the other tucked into the body. That's actually to conserve heat. I've seen them doing this before with just one leg, and it was like, oh man, is your other leg, is it hurt? Oh no, little buddy. Nope, it's to conserve heat. We talked before about migration. The Arctic tern migrates a ridiculous distance, 31,000 miles. Given a lifespan of 25 years, that's 600,000 miles traveled. What? Okay, I found this fascinating. Pigeons and doves are the only North American birds capable of sucking up water to drink. Like, imagine a straw. Most other birds have to dip their head down, fill up their bill, and then tip it up and let the water drain down their throat. It's interesting that pigeons and dove, they also require an unusually higher amount of water. Up to 15% of their body weight is water. That's not what most birds are. Then we talk about kingfishers. It's one of my favorites. I would really love to see one like dive into the water and catch a fish, but I didn't know all that much about them. Worldwide, kingfishers vary wildly. Many species typically occur far from water and do not eat fish. The kookaburra is in the same family and eats many types of reptiles and small rodents. Okay, the kingbirds are named for their aggressive nature towards their territory. It's not uncommon to see them attacking a larger bird, such as a hawk. I've actually seen this in person, and not that long ago, I saw them attacking an osprey. That happened just this year. What I haven't seen and I'd love to see are the eastern kingbirds will go so far as to ride on the hawk's back in flight, pecking the back of the head. I haven't seen in person, but that would be that would be fascinating to see. You see a big hawk and then there's a little bird on it just pecking away at it. What? Starlings have specifically developed muscles that allow them to open their bills while probing in the soil. So they can stick their bill into the dirt and then open it, which is not something most birds can do apparently, because they don't have muscles to be able to do that. This feeding behavior is called gaping. And that's apparently maybe why starlings can winter in some areas that others have to migrate. If it gets too cold and others have to leave, starlings can stay there because they can stick their bill in and kind of open up and dig in the dirt rather than just what's on the surface. I learned about the bananaquit, which is widespread in the Caribbean. They drink nectar, similar to hummingbirds. However, while on smaller flowers, they do the same behavior as hummingbirds, entering through the opening and thus pollinating other flowers with their pollen. They are also known to nectar rob by cutting a slit in the side of the flower and drinking nectar that way. Other birds will then use that hole to rob the nectar. It's robbing because they're not doing the pollinating process, which is the whole point. That's what the flowers want. And then our final thing has to do with finches. Female finches during courtship will crouch, flutter their wings, and give a begging call. Males will respond by mock feeding or actually regurgitating food. I've seen this with finches on my porch over the years, and I thought that they were just young. No, that's a courtship move. You might think that they're young, even though they don't look it, but they are going, I want food, and the male responds with, here you go. That's not babies. That's adults going to make babies. No, I don't think I can say that. I think that's all the ones that I made a lot more notes. Like I said, it's a 600-page book. I learned a lot about things, and it'll probably do me good in a couple years to read through it again because there was a lot in here. It was really dense. They kind of went over some general facts about birds and specifics, and then we got into families of birds, and each section kind of has their own. And I got to say, it really did. Each section wrapped up with a little bit of a bummer with which birds are on the decline and which ones aren't so much. And most birds were on the decline. I talked in a previous video yesterday about one of the things that I'm starting up, which is a podcast, not specifically about animals that are going extinct, but that is what inspired me to start doing it. It's about a lot of things, and that was one of them. And this book definitely, after week reading it, being like, this is really cool. I really like enjoying it. Oh, the birds. Okay. I'm learning all this stuff, and they're almost all dead. Great. Or some are doing okay. Not many, but some are doing okay. Starlings is one of them. They're a very invasive species, and that's one of the ones who are surviving really well. Anyway, so this is the book that I read. It was great. I really enjoyed it. There was another one that I read before this that was more like a condensed, smaller one. I'll probably read that one again next just to kind of refresh myself. Every couple of years, it's probably going to be good for me to just read some kind of textbook, some kind of educational about birds specifically. If this is what I want to do, I need to learn as much as I can about them, learn their habitat. Part of that's going to be book learning. Part of that's going to be on the ground out there looking and learning and skills and developing and practicing. But this wasn't all that I did in 2024 directly towards learning. And this one will also continue through the next few years until I get through everything. I wanted to watch. I needed inspiration and motivation to be getting out and doing these things, and kind of what I'm working towards in some ways. The thing that got me going originally from wildlife photography that I'd been doing for a few years to pivot into video was a nature documentary series. I watched a series called Our Planet on Netflix, narrated by David Attenborough, and it changed my life, I suppose you could say, because it really pivoted what I was doing, and it made me go, well, let me get a video specific camera and try to do that. So I wanted to go back and start watching some of those. I didn't start with that one, but I did go as far back. I got my hands on pretty much anything by David Attenborough. I also read his book during this time, and I watched the series that kind of went along with it. But we started out, let me just run through. Life on Earth was one that they made in 1979. That's where he got his start in nature documentary specifically. I learned a fair amount about David Attenborough. Fantastic. So I watched Life on Earth. Then I moved into Blue Planet. I watched the first season of that. These are not organized by date, so I'm just kind of looking around. I watched a whole thing. David Attenborough's First Life. I watched that. That was only a couple episodes, but that was good. I moved into Frozen Planet after that. After watching Frozen Planet, looks like we did... Oh yeah, David Attenborough's Conquest of the Skies. That was a good. I was looking for a couple smaller ones to, more bite-sized rather than like 12 episodes taking place over 12 weeks. I'm watching one a week. But then we jumped into Galapagos. That was really good. That I recommend that. That was another shorter one that I did. Planet Earth. I finally have watched the first season of Planet Earth. I've got 2 more to watch. We have so many on this list of what I have available to watch, and there are a lot of really good nature documentaries. After I finished up Planet Earth, that's when I moved into Our Planet. I'm currently, every Sunday morning when I'm not going out, because I do that on Saturday and Monday, I'm sitting down and I'm watching an episode of a nature documentary in some way, just absorbing, enjoying, appreciating, wondering how they got some of these shots, wondering, hopefully they did it in respectful ways, especially the older one, not so much, but like there was a little bit where you could tell and go, oh, this is, they built a little enclosure and just put the animal in it so that they could get the shots, especially when there were animals that would go underground and they show it like through a pane of glass where you can see inside the tunnel. Obviously they can't do that out in the wild, and it makes sense. Some of it's faked, some of it has a bad history, but I really respect all the ones that don't and do it in a nice, respectful way towards the animals. It's a lot tougher to do, and that's what I'm doing going out there, but they're doing it on a whole other level, and it's just really cool to see and very inspirational to enjoy this stuff. So that's what I've been working on. That's everything. Not entirely everything that I learned, but that's a lot of what I did in 2024. Birds are cool. Bye, everybody.